All right, whenever you're ready.
All right. When should I start now?
Yeah.
All right. Hi, I'm Thomas Farrell. I'm going to talk today about GMOs and how they're controversial because people are fearful that they could be harmful to their bodies. So to start off, I'll talk about GMOs. Means genetically modified organism, and really they were invented thousands of years ago by our ancestors when they first started selective breeding, on plants and things in order to get desirable traits. But for clarification purposes, when I say like genetically modified or GM foods or GMO in this, I'll mean stuff that was modified by modern means, which is modern day we do it like in a lab, we can do it a lot more efficiently and faster and stuff. So basically, the fact of the matter is that GM food provides significant advantages to the consumers. It's very helpful, and this is because it is nutritionally equivalent to normal food, and it's safe to eat. It has advantages that non-GMO food cannot provide, and is likely one of our greatest tools to secure the future. So first, I'll explain why it is safe to eat. So in a study done by Alison Van Eenennaam of UC Davis Animal Science Department, she did this study and she took 30 years of data, of animal health data, from when animals were eating no GMO food to all GMO food pretty much. And the study found no detectable health difference in these animals. And she went on to say, this is a quote from the abstract of the study, because DNA and protein are normal components of the diet that are digested, there are no detectable or reliably quantifiable traces of GE components in the milk, the meat, and the eggs following consumption of GE feed. Basically, that was just a lot of big words that basically just mean, in addition to finding no evidence of this being unsafe, there was really no theoretical basis for it to be unsafe in the first place. Now, secondly, GM food has advantages over non-GMO food. This one's a lot easier to, find the advantages because they're all over the place. For example, in an article in the New York Times website by the Associated Press, they're talking about a potato that's been recently approved by the FDA to be eaten. This potato, the reason this potato was created is because it has less bruising, has a longer storage potential, and it even has less of a potential carcinogen that's been, a known carcinogen in it. And it also has a natural resistance to the potato blight, which is the same disease that caused the Irish famine, the big one. So that's good. And it's not like they unnaturally created this Franken potato either. They just found a naturally occurring potato in Argentina, and they just took that gene and put it into this other potato. So it's still it's pretty much completely natural still. They didn't make up a new thing. Now, lastly, how our future food needs may depend on GMO food. So basically, population's increasing a lot, you always hear about that, and we need more food, and we're not necessarily, our rate of increasing food supply is not necessarily matching our rate of increasing population. So basically, in an article, to sum it up, in an article in the MIT Technology Review, there's a quote that reads, according to Jonathan Jones, a scientist at the Sainsbury Laboratory in the UK, the upcoming pressures on agricultural production, he says, are real and will affect millions of people in poor countries. Poor countries like Mexico and all that, like Mexico, for example, close neighbors down south. And when there's harsh weather and whatnot, and fast changing weather patterns, that'll hurt the crop production because a weather pattern changes quickly and the crops die. And if you're doing traditional breeding methods, it can take up to 15 years to selectively breed a trait that allow that plant to survive. And it's already dead by that time in 15 years. So if you genetically modify it and put that trait in immediately, that's a lot faster. You can do that in less than a year, and now this plant can survive. So, you can obviously see how having these traits, these genetic modifications, can increase crop yields in poor countries and across the world. And although, as of yet, there has not been a lot of evidence there's not been a lot of physical evidence that has shown that these things do improve the crop yield. They have not yet improved the crop yield by that much. However, scientists acknowledge this. And there's another quote from a Cornell professor, Margaret Smith, who says, We will need a second generation of transgenic crops. It would be a mistake to roll out this tool because the first products didn't address the big issues. So she's saying that although it hasn't yet, this is still most likely our best tool for accomplishing this. So, to summarize, genetic foods are very advantageous to society for the reasons that they are safe. There's nothing harmful about them, so, at the very worst, nothing changes. It's not like we're all going to die from this. And secondly, they provide all these advantages over normal food. And lastly, they could potentially increase the crop yield and be a lot more of it, so people get more food for everyone. And that's why GM food is good.
All right, at the beginning of the speech, I know what your subject is, but I don't know what your proposition is. You don't really make an explicit statement of what it is you're going to be arguing for. You do finally turn in present a preview. None of those points are labeled at the beginning of the speech. I just kind of know that that's where they're going, and because you've got a list, I assume that's what it was. So I thought that the opening was not quite as strong organizationally as it should be, because the goal is to make it clear for the audience when they're listening to you. In the body of the speech, though, you did a very good job signposting the secondary claims and explaining each point as it came up. I thought you did a good job on that. You were consistent about citing evidence. I do think you could probably use a little bit more evidence on that first point. You're making a lot of inferences from the one particular study and piece of data that you've got there. So I think more information is going to be necessary to convince anybody who's hesitant to consume these foods or feel at least comfortable consuming those foods. I did think, though, throughout the speech that you cited your sources pretty effectively, had some good expert testimony and factual data in the presentation, so you did a solid job on those things. And given the evidence that you had, I thought that you, at the end of the speech, you made reasonable inferences on the secondary points. You did kind of have a clearer statement of what your proposition was at the end. GM is good, but that's a value claim the way he phrased it. So let's keep it straightforward. There are benefits to having genetically modified foods, which is really what the content of your speech was. So it's not that complicated to come up with a proposition. You just need to make sure that people know where it is to help them through it. And I thought that you did a good job presenting for the most part. I thought you spoke to the audience effectively, looked confident and relaxed while you were speaking. The only thing that's maybe a little bit of distraction, that if you were in a public speaking class, I'd yell at you about a little bit, is the hand in the pocket kind of thing. I know it's cold, and that left hand gets a little chilly, so I can warm it up occasionally. Thank you.